Okay. Hello everybody and welcome to South Oxfordshire District Council and Vale of Whitehorse District Council's first recycling presentation as part of National Recycling Week. Thank you for attending. Just a few housekeeping rules to start with. You should all be able to see my screen, which is the first page of a PowerPoint presentation, and you should also hopefully all be able to hear me. But you won't be able to see me at this point. Just to let you know that you are all muted and your videos aren't on, so we can't see you. And this talk is being recorded to be shared on our website at a later date. This presentation is going to cover why we recycle, a bit of legislation in there, and also how to use each of your bins. You can ask questions throughout this talk using the Q&A box that you should see on the right hand side of your screen, and you can type a question in there and they will either be answered by my colleague Alex, who is sort of managing this, or she will leave them for me to answer at the end of the talk. We'll have a bit of time for questions then. This is the first time that we've done an event like this as part of the waste team, so it is new software for us, so please do be patient. Hopefully it will run smoothly. All right, so it's 31 minutes past, so I will make a start, and hopefully if anyone joins us later, they'll be able to pick up where we are. All right then, let's see if this works. All right, so when we're talking about waste and recycling, a good place to start is with sort of current legislation that as a district council we follow. So on the screen in front of you, you will see a pyramid, and that is the waste hierarchy and that was part of the European Waste Directive 2008. And it basically sets out 6 different methods of waste disposal, with the bottom of the pyramid being the least favoured option. And you go up through these methods to the most favoured option at the top of the pyramid there. So you can start at the bottom there, you see it says disposal, and disposal is really just another term for landfill. Obviously landfill is quite unfavourable from an environmental point of view, and actually very few local authorities around the country use landfill, and that's in part due to the landfill tax, which came in in 1996 and puts a levy on waste per tonne sent to landfill. This started off at £7 a tonne in 1996 and currently stands at £94.15 per tonne. So you can see that obviously this incrementally rises year by year, and it's not really economically viable to send our waste to landfill. And in South Oxfordshire and Vale of Whitehorse, we actually only send about 5% of our waste to landfill. If you go up another step, we've got energy recovery, and this is disposing of waste in a way that we get energy from it. So the most sort of common method that we think of is incineration, and that's what we do with our general waste, our refuse, the contents of your grey bin. Obviously it's better than landfill, but it's still not the most favoured way of getting rid of waste. If you go up another step there, we've got recycling, and recycling you should all be fairly familiar with. That is breaking down a product into a sort of smaller particulate matter to be made back into a new product rather than using brand new raw materials. Obviously we're all familiar with recycling. We know that it's great, but it is quite interesting to see that recycling is only the 3rd step on this hierarchy, on this pyramid, and you've got 3 methods of waste sort of disposal and management above that. So if we go up a step, you've got reuse, which is fairly self-explanatory. That is obviously reusing a product for either its original purpose or something brand new. So obviously the most common one that we can think of is plastic drinks bottles, and reusing those for, you know, water throughout the day. We go up again and we've got minimisation, and that obviously is just reducing the amount of waste that you produce in the first place. And then finally, the best way of dealing with waste is just to prevent it, to not generate it in the first place. And there's actually a movement, the zero waste lifestyle, where people only buy products and live their life in a way which means they generate no waste whatsoever, or minimal waste. Okay, and then we go to the next slide. So hopefully everyone will be familiar with this symbol. This is sort of the universal sign for recycling. It's actually called the Mobius loop, and it's used all around the globe. It's made up of the 3 arrows there, and that's sort of where our catchphrase reduce, reuse, recycle came from, and it matches with these 3 arrows. And really what these 3 arrows are symbolizing is a sort of a closed loop system. So waste goes into sort of waste management streams and it doesn't come back out again. It just keeps getting remade and remade into brand new products, so recycled over and over again. Okay, so bear with me. All right, so there's a few waste and recycling targets that the UK and England are working towards or working under that are quite important when we're talking about waste and recycling. The first one being there is an EU target that 50% of UK waste is going to be recycled by December 2020. We're not there yet. We're currently sitting at about 46 to 47%. And to be honest, it doesn't look like we will, as a country, reach this target by December. Obviously, this has been sort of altered by COVID, as many things have been, but also with Brexit, there's a lot of unknowns whether we will continue to work towards EU targets or whether we will sort of generate our own targets, whether they'll be similar to these or something brand new. We also have the Waste and Resources Strategy that came out in late 2018 and sets out sort of 5 targets that we're trying to reach. These are they, sorry, excuse me. So all plastic packaging is to be reusable, recyclable or compostable by 2025. We're going to eliminate food waste sent to landfill by 2030. Eliminate unnecessary plastic waste by 2030. Double resource productivity, and eliminate all avoidable waste by 2050. And to help us reach these 5 targets, there are a few sort of legislations and laws that are going to be coming in to help us get to this point. And for an example, one of those is the deposit return system, which is when you can take plastic drinks bottles or drinks cans either back to the retailer that you bought it from or to a reverse vending machine, put it in there and you get some money back, but that money you will have paid on the original cost of the product, so it'd be sort of 10p or so, and that's obviously the deposit that you're paying and that you get back to then use in the retailer or other retailers, and that kind of puts a financial incentive on recycling for us as consumers. You've also got extended producer responsibility, which is a sort of a movement to put pressure on producers to make their packaging and products recyclable, and that is currently set at £200 per tonne on items with less than 30% of non-virgin plastics. So non-virgin means non-recycled plastics, and yes, so that's the plastic packaging tax, which is part of the extended producer responsibility. All right. Okay, so why do we recycle? The most obvious one that we think of is to save the natural world and oceans. So everybody will be familiar with images in the media of sort of the oceans, ocean life, sea mammals and fish and things being choked by plastic products. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. There we go. Yeah, so there was a very famous video that went around a few years ago, of a turtle with a straw up its nose. We often see images of whales that have washed up on beaches, and when they cut them open, they're full of plastics. And it's actually estimated that 1 million birds and over 10,000 sea mammals are dying each year from eating or getting tangled up in plastic waste. And the sad truth is that if rubbish isn't disposed of correctly, it will end up in our waterways and eventually end up in the ocean. And in the Pacific Ocean, there's actually a big patch of waste rubbish called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and it's 3 times the size of France at 1.6 million square kilometres. And for a long time, it was thought that this was made up mostly of microplastics, which are these little pieces of plastic that are less than 5 mil in size, and they come out of our clothes quite a lot because they get through the filters on washing machines. And you know, they're so small you can barely see them. However, they did a recent study where they actually went through the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in boats and discovered that it's not just microplastics. It's actually also made up enormously of larger pieces of plastic. And it's estimated that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish, which isn't fantastic. And obviously, we want to preserve the natural world for as long as possible. Many of you will be familiar with David Attenborough, and he obviously did an episode of The Blue Planet a few years ago that really brought this to the forefront of people's minds because they saw these effects firsthand. We also want to save humans. There are lots of sort of adverse health effects that have come out about certain material types, certain plastics, and what they can do to us. And if we go back to the point of the oceans, it's actually estimated that if you eat fish, particularly bottom feeder fish, you are ingesting a credit card sized piece of plastic every week. So yeah, we want to keep ourselves healthy. If when landfill was being used quite a lot, there was a lot of worry with sort of chemical leaching, which is when chemicals come out of the rubbish that's being buried and goes into sort of our waterways and the soil. And obviously that would have an impact on us as well. And then also we want to save resources and energy. You know, there's a lot of demonization of plastics out there, but also sort of aluminium and steel cans, although a lot of them are recycled, if they're not made from recycled materials, then obviously mining is required in that. And if we do go to plastic bottles, it takes 10 litres of water to make a 1 litre plastic bottle. So we obviously, with sort of climate change and things like that, we do want to save our resources and use them as efficiently as possible. However, it's not all doom and gloom. As I mentioned, David Attenborough did an episode of The Blue Planet where he showed the impact of plastic and waste on the ocean. And following the airing of that episode, there was a 50% reduction in the use of single-use plastics in 12 months. So obviously it shows that people do care, and by having this spotlight on certain materials, it can make an impact. Unfortunately, after that 12 months, it did start to climb up again. So obviously we need to constantly be thinking about this. Okay. All right, so what barriers are there to recycling? The main one is what we call recycling contamination, which is things going into recycling bins that shouldn't be there, and particularly items that can change the quality of the good recycling around them. So in our districts, the particularly big 4 bad ones are nappies, textiles, food waste, and black bin liners. Obviously, nappies and food waste can be sort of wet, which means that they can really damage the quality, particularly of paper and cardboard around them. It can go mouldy, and then that can't be recycled. Textiles are another one. We can't recycle them from curbside. We offer a specialist collection for your textiles. They need to go into a tied carrier bag next to your green bin, but not in your green bin. And then finally, black bin liners present an issue because our crews need to be able to see what's in the recycling bin. So even if clean recycling is in a black bin liner, we cannot collect it. And this can have real implications further down the line. It can take up to 2 months for your bin to be collected, between your bin being collected from outside your house to that recycling being processed at our plant down in London. So like I say, if things start to go mouldy, they can be completely ruined by the time they get down there. And the facility can actually reject our recycling if the quality is too low or there are too many contaminants, which means this entire huge lorry worth of recycling can be rejected and sent to be incinerated. And here are some photographs of examples of recycling contamination, particularly food waste there. So you can see it can really ruin the recycling around it. It's not pleasant for the bin crews particularly, and those that have to go through the recycling. And there was also a bit of an issue with certain sort of environmental movements and blanket approaches, in particular when it comes to labelling. So a product might be made to be recyclable in the eyes of the manufacturer, but what can and can't be recycled varies between districts depending on what technologies we have available to us at our recycling facility. So just because something says it's recyclable, it doesn't mean that we can recycle it. So it's always worth checking with your local authority to make sure that it is recyclable, and you can check our app BinZone that you can download onto a smartphone, or it's also a web tool on our website where you can search by item. An example of that is the National Trust magazine was originally, well, I say originally, so last year was being sent out in cornstarch bags, which said, you know, I am compostable, I'm biodegradable, put me in your food bin. We can't accept biodegradable and compostable items in our food waste because it doesn't break down. They have actually changed that labelling now, so I assume that they probably had quite a lot of feedback from different local authorities around the country, but obviously a lot of people will get confused by that, and that is a barrier to our recycling. Okay, so where do we stand as South Oxfordshire and Vale of Whitehorse District Council? So both districts, both South Oxfordshire and Vale of Whitehorse, are some of the best districts in the country, and we sit well above that national target of 50%. So our most recent recycling rate, which was published in 2018-19, put South Oxfordshire at 63.3%. and Vale of Whitehorse at 62.5% of, so that's the percentage of our waste that is sent to be recycled, which puts South Oxfordshire at second best local authority in the country, and Vale of Whitehorse is fourth best. So we're in the top 5, and you can see that on our graph that's on the screen in front of you now. The orange line is Vale of Whitehorse and the blue line is South Oxfordshire, and you can see that we have had a very high rate, but it is dropping slowly, but there does seem to be a little bit of a downward trend there. And that's really why we do events like this tonight, is to try and show people how to recycle correctly. We know that it can be very confusing, it changes quite a lot, and that's why myself and my colleague sort of exist, is to clear up any questions and help everybody out. Okay, so let's so that's just the South Oxfordshire percentage there. But really our stance is to try and make recycling as easy as possible for our residents. We collect sort of the main groups of recycling, and we collect that as mixed recycling. So some local authorities around the country will ask their residents to separate their recycling by material type. So, you know, you'll have to put sort of glass in one box, paper and card in another, but we go for mixed recycling, which, you know, in theory makes it a lot easier for our residents because they can put it all into one bin. And we also categorise our recycling, particularly our plastics recycling, on item type rather than material composition. So it doesn't matter sort of what type of plastic it is, it depends what the item itself is. So whether it's a plastic pot or a plastic tub and that kind of thing. However, we do still have some issues with residents putting the wrong thing in the bin, and to deal with that, we have created an oops tag, which hopefully nobody watching this talk will recognise. But what will happen is our crews have to lift the lids of recycling bins and have a look at what's inside. And if they see something that shouldn't be there, they will not collect the bin, and they will put this tag on it, which will say, oops, your bin wasn't emptied this week, and then they can mark on it what was in there. That means it wasn't emptied. We will not return for that bin. It is down to the resident to remove that non-recyclable item and either put it into their grey bin or, you know, take it down to a household waste recycling centre, and then we will try and collect it the following recycling collection day. Okay. And if we go back to those legislations that I spoke about in the early slides, in terms of the waste and resources strategy, we are already in keeping with that. We don't send our food waste to landfill. For more information on what actually happens to your waste, tune into our talk on Thursday, which will be at the same time at 6:30, where we talk about what happens to each of the bins. All right. So another piece of feedback that we get quite a lot is about symbols. Obviously, I mentioned just then when it comes to plastics, we don't worry about the material composition, which is the little number, the plastic type. And there are a lot of symbols out there, and we do know that they can be very confusing and they're quite conflicting. So hopefully you will recognise this one. Obviously, we talked about it earlier on in the presentation. That is a general recycling sign. You used to see that a lot on items and products, but we see it a little bit less now, and you'll see more of this one, which is a lot clearer. It can separate an item into the different parts. So for example, a microwave meal, you might have the plastic tray, the film lid and the cardboard sleeve, and each of those will be identified on the label, and it will say whether it's recyclable or not recyclable. So if you have either of those, they basically mean that it is recyclable if it says so, and they're the only ones that you really need to worry about. Because then we have this one, which is very confusing. It's green and it's got arrows, which obviously people automatically associate with recycling. It doesn't actually mean that something is recyclable. It means that the manufacturer has made a financial contribution to recycling. So yeah, if you see that, please don't put it in your green bin. It's a bit tricky. And then you've also got this one, which is obviously, again, the little Mobius loop that we all recognise, and then the X will be a number, and then it will have the percentage sign, and that's talking about the percentage of that product that's made from recycled materials. And then finally, which relate to paper and cardboard and mean that they've come from a sustainable forest. So for every tree that's been cut down, they've planted a new one. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that it's recyclable. And then, as I've mentioned, ignore the numbers on plastics. They mean absolutely nothing when it comes to recycling in our districts. Okay, so now we're just going to cover what goes into each of your bins. So we'll start with the green bin, your recycling bin. And into that bin you can put plastic pots, so that's yogurt pots or sauce pots, plastic tubs, so ice cream tubs, margarine tubs, plastic trays, so fruit and meat trays of any colour, even black, plastic bottles, drinks bottles, milk bottles, shampoo bottles and cleaning product bottles, aluminium and steel tins and cans, aerosol cans as long as they're empty, glass jars and bottles of any colour, you can leave the labels on and the lids on, paper and cardboard, as long as it's not got any food or grease on it. So for example, pizza boxes with grease on it can't go into your green bin, tin foil products, and food and drink cartons, so Tetra Paks, milk cartons, that kind of thing. And that's a picture of an example of things that you can recycle. Oh, sorry. All recycling must be clean and dry. So give it a rinse before you pop it in your bin. If you can't get food and sort of leftover food off it, then don't put it into your recycling. And it should go into that bin loose, or if you have to use a bag, please use a completely clear bag, not a black bag, not a white bag, or a slightly see-through bag. It has to be completely clear, completely see-through, and you can buy those bags from supermarkets. Okay, and then your grey bin, so your general waste, what we can't recycle. So this is for everything that can't go into your green bin. So into that one is bubble wrap, cling film, and then filmy plastics like crisp packets, biscuit wrappers and salad bags. You do have another use for these bags. You can use them to line your food waste caddy if you if you don't want to put them straight in the bin if you feel bad about that. Polystyrene is also not recyclable. If that ends up in the outdoor environment, they actually estimate it takes 700 years to break down on its own. So we don't see a huge amount of polystyrene used anymore. You know, a lot of manufacturers are trying to find alternative ways of packaging delicate goods. Flower pots are not recyclable. Hard plastics like children's toys and coat hangers and things like that. Tissues and kitchen roll are not recyclable either. The fibres in those are too short to be recycled, and often they are made from recycled materials already. And disposable coffee cups, so although they look like they're made from cardboard, they're actually laminated. And then finally, food stained items. So I mentioned pizza boxes before. So even if it is made from something that would otherwise be recycled, if it's got food or grease on it, it cannot go into your green bin and should go into your grey bin. And that picture is an example of things that should go into your grey bin. Also, sort of wooden items or metal household items, kitchen knives we get inquiries about quite often as well. They can't be recycled. They need to go into your grey bin. So no wood or metal can be recycled from curbside, but you can take it to your local household waste recycling centre. Okay, and finally, your food waste caddy. It's pretty simple, really. All of your food waste can go into there. So you've got a nice picture there of food waste when it gets to our facility that we process it at. But in there, you can also put tea bags, eggshells and bones, tea bags and coffee grounds, that is as well. Sort of plate scrapings and leftovers, any mouldy food, whether it's starchy breads or meat or anything like that can go into there. Cooking oil. You can either free pour cooking oil into your food bin, or you can present it in a 1 litre plastic bottle, but that must be inside your outdoor food bin with the lid closed. We don't want any compostable or biodegradable packaging. So that exclusively means things like compostable and biodegradable coffee cups or sandwich wrappers or anything like that. There's a lot of that out there. Or tissues, we don't want that in there. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned, they don't break down in the process. For more information on that, come back to our talk on Thursday. But it can be in any liners, so they don't have to be compostable liners. You can use any plastic bag. You can use carrier bags, pedal bin liners, salad bags, bread bags, anything like that, because all of that plastic is removed before the food waste is processed. Right, and that's it. So I'll have a look to see if we've got any questions in our box. Okay, so do the targets apply to commercial waste as well? That is a very good question. We do, as a council, only deal with municipal waste, which is household waste. So I couldn't answer that completely well. For more information, for a better answer, I can't answer it sort of off the hoof here. You can actually send us an email at waste.team@southernvale.gov.uk, and I can get you a better answer basically. But yeah, we do as obviously a local authority, we only deal with household waste collections. We don't deal with commercial waste, but oh yeah, that's all I'm going to say for that before I dig myself a hole. All right, and then we've got another question here, which is what percentage of our recycling is rejected from contamination? So the most recently published rates are about 12% for both districts. The recycling rates and the contamination rates, or rejection rates as we call them, are publicly available and are published on a yearly basis. So we haven't had the most recent year's rates approved yet. So they'll get sent to DEFRA, who basically check them, and then they will become publicly available. So the last year, which I think was 2018-19, is about 11-12%. If you do want any more information on sort of how much we collect, the tonnages of different materials, that kind of thing, you can actually access that. That's reported, I think, on a quarterly basis and is put on a website called Waste Data Flow. And on our website, we've got instructions on how to use it, because it is quite a confusing website and program, but you can access that as a member of the public, because it has to be publicly available. All right, and I don't think that there are actually any other questions at this point. So yeah, if anybody thinks of any other questions, feel free to email us and we will get back to you. And as I've mentioned, there is another talk on Thursday, which will talk about what happens to our waste. So the processing facilities, and sort of we often have lots of questions about where it ends up. So we'll cover that a little bit as much as we can as well. So yeah, thank you all for attending. I hope that you found this interesting. If you have any feedback again as well, please feel free to send us an email, and keep recycling.